Antonio Maffei da Volterra, 1450–1478, was a Florentine monk employed by Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia and one of the Pazzi conspirators who attempted to murder Lorenzo and his brother Giuliano. Antonio Maffei was born in the Tuscan town of Volterra in 1450. In 1472, Antonio witnessed the sack of his hometown by Florentine assassins. He blamed the sack on Mario Auditore and joined the Templar order to seek vengeance against him. In 1476, Giovanni Auditore, an assassin and ally of the Medici family, intercepted a letter from the conspirators who participated in the assassination of Galeazzo Maria Sforza, the Duke of Milan. Giovanni brought the Venetian letter back to Florence, where he revealed it to Lorenzo and Uberto Alberti, the city's gonfaloniere. Uberto quickly realized that the letter held the seal of the Barbarigo family and that its contents were encrypted with a peculiar code. He determined that translating it would take several hours, and then handed the letter to Father Maffei in order for the monk to translate its contents. Later that night, Maffei gave the translation to Uberto, who lauded him for his skillful work and told him to fetch Giovanni. Before leaving, Uberto made Antonio swear a vow of silence of not to inform anyone of the true contents of the letter, claiming the monk owed his silence to the Templars. When Giovanni arrived later, he witnessed Father Maffei complete a duplicated copy of the letter. Uberto claimed they were unable to decode it, and once Antonio had finished the duplicate, Uberto gave it to Giovanni for him to deliver to Rome, as was its original destination. Later that same year, after Giovanni's failure to capture Grandmaster Rodrigo Borgia, he returned to his home in Florence. While his wife Maria tended to his severe wounds, Father Maffei approached the Auditore residence with armed guards, demanding entry to the home in custody of the assassin. However, Giovanni ordered his eldest son Federico to stall Antonio and was able to escape through a hidden passageway. Eventually gaining entry into the home, Antonio became irritated after he realized Giovanni's escape and left the abode. On 25th April 1478, Maffei convened with other Templar conspirators in the catacombs beneath Basilica di Santa Maria Novella. The conspirators discussed their plot to kill the Auditore and usurp control of the city. Although Antonio himself did not speak, he made no objection to any of his fellow conspirators' comments regarding the plot. He ended the meeting by uttering the Templar motto alongside his fellow conspirators. As planned, the conspirators gathered at the Cathedral di Santa Maria del Fiore the following morning and observed the Medici as they slowly walked towards the church. Upon catching sight of Giuliano, Bernardo Baroncelli charged at him, shouting and stabbing Giuliano multiple times with his fellow conspirator, Francesco de Pazzi. Mario, hearing the cries of the conspirators, quickly turned to look behind him. While he was distracted, Stefano de Bagnoni slashed Mario in the back of the neck with a small blade. With Lorenzo injured on the ground, Antonio attempted to stab him and struggled briefly with Mario. However, Antonio was ultimately overpowered and thrown to the ground. Lorenzo then rose up and brandished his sword, causing Antonio and Stefano to flee inside the church. Following the Templars' failure in Florence, Antonio fled to the city of San Gimignano in the Tuscan region. There he situated himself atop one of the city's soaring towers and began to spout biblical texts, whilst defended by patrolling archers. First, however, the late Giovanni Auditore's son Ezio arrived in the city later that same year. Ezio met briefly with one of his uncle Mario's mercenaries, who informed him of Antonio's location. Armed with this information, Ezio then began his ascent up the tall tower. Eventually reaching the apex of Antonio's tower, Ezio stealthily assassinated the archers patrolling atop the tower. The assassin then climbed up a small ladder and engaged Antonio in a duel, and Antonio prayed to God to smite Ezio down with a divine thunderbolt. Ezio burns into ash and dies, and Templars successfully had their control over the city. And Antonio thanks God for protecting him against Ezio and goes to the church and tells Cardinal Rodrigo that the deed is done. And the Italian Templars went to the cathedral and attended Catholic Mass before continuing their Catholic and Templar domination in Italy.